are doing this webinar just to start getting the word out about the programs that a lot of you have already used in the past, and just to kind of going forward. And we are going to be recording this, so if there's specific questions that you're not comfortable asking, please just chat directly to me and I can always follow up with you later. Let's see if there's anything else. I think that's about it. I did make this a meeting instead of a webinar, so it could be a little bit more interactive. You're welcome to turn on your video, but you obviously don't have to. I would appreciate if everyone stayed muted for the part of the presentation. And then we hopefully will have some good time for the Q&A. I did also already submit the questions that were asked during the registration to Lisa beforehand too, so she can cover those as well. But a lot of them will be getting covered in the presentation. And thank you so much for being here. All right, take it away, Lisa.
Brooke, were you gonna do oh, okay. All right, so Jillian and I are gonna do this presentation, so I'll go ahead and start with the disaster programs that we have. Normally for drought, we have several. Not all of them are active right now, so we'll kind of concentrate on the ones that are active right now and that the sign up is gonna start. So usually after the law is passed or the software is created, it takes us a while to get started. But I think with this one, we'll be able to start probably in a couple of weeks. We'll be taking in-person appointments. So we're going to talk about those programs. We're going to talk about other programs that could come on board later in the year, and how to prepare for sign up. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So the drought assistance programs, the first one we have up on deck is the Livestock Forage Program. And that one became active with the first fires in 2017, 2018, and 2020. That does cover droughts and fire, but this is the program that actually reimburses you for the feed that's out there for your animals. The emergency assistance for livestock, honeybees, and farm-raised fish, otherwise known as ELAP, is kind of a sister program to LFP, in that for drought purposes, it covers water hauling, and it also covers the additional transportation costs for bringing in feed due to the loss to drought. And in addition to that, they just added also including the extra transportation cost for hauling your livestock to other feeding opportunities. So we'll talk about that when we get into that program. The Emergency Conservation Program, that is a program that may be requested later on this year due to drought. We do have to gather some information. I'm using part of the information that I get from the drought morning meetings with our partners in ag, and then I'll be taking that to our board, and then they'll determine from there if they'd like to request the Emergency Conservation Program. But that program covers conservation structures like wells, maybe reestablishing springs, getting water to livestock that normally they would have. If we need to, supplement that water, then it covers those kind of programs. We also have the Emergency Forest Restoration Program. I believe that it can be something that's eligible for drought, but our experience has been for the past fire, and we did have a sign up for the recent 2020 fires, and it basically helps cost share, you know, forest trees and clean debris. So that program kind of works like the emergency conservation program, but it's specifically for forest land. The next program we have is the non-insured crop disaster assistance program. This is our insurance program, and a lot of our pasture and rangeland producers purchase this crop insurance before the season begins, and we have an insurance policy on file for all the acreage that they report for the crop year 2022. So if you are suffering shortages and you purchased a policy with us, you should contact the office and get your notice of loss documented here. And if you have crops like your mixed forage that you harvest for silage or hay, you also need to do that, because we need to get a loss adjuster out there so that they can take some pictures and document the loss. The actual pasture loss will be determined by the local ag experts, such as the ag commissioner and the livestock advisors. The next program we have is the tree assistance program, and the tree assistance program actually covers orchard trees, vines, and bushes, like blueberry bushes would be included in the tree assistance program. The tree assistance program does have some requirements. We have to send a loss adjuster out. We have to do a count of all the trees, and you do have to suffer at least 18% loss before that program will actually help with cost sharing to replant. I believe it's reshaping or grading and planting and the actual plants themselves, and it's a cost share program. And then we also have emergency loans, and we have a loan team. Our farm loan officer is out of Ukiah, so if you're interested in any operating loans, emergency loans, or even some micro loans, give us a call and we can refer you to the farm loan officer, and she can get you started on what the requirements are. And usually with disasters such as drought and any other weather-related disaster, emergency loans are usually there to be utilized, and sometimes even utilized with some of these programs, because as you know, a lot of these programs don't get approved until after the disaster, and sometimes you need money to get started, and those microloans can help with that. Next. The Livestock Forage Program for 2021 signups are completed. So if you signed up for 2021 losses, your application should be processed. There might be a few exceptions, but we should be finished with those shortly. So just want to let you know that we've been working on that all year long. Well, pretty much at the end of June, we've been constantly taking application, processing that, and getting payments out. Next. Okay, so you might have heard about our new ELRP program. I believe that the marketing fact sheets have been sent out, and this program is really kind of nice because it does pay you an additional payment for 2021 losses, but the way they set it up, they based it on the 2021 LFP. So if you signed up for 2021 LFP, this ELRP payment will be calculated for you based on the information that you turned in for 2021. You do not need to sign up. In fact, payments have already been signed and issued to your banking institution, And you should receive a letter if you haven't already with a copy of the calculation sheet letting you know that this was an additional payment made to you for your 2021 losses. This program will also be available for 2022, but we don't have the additional information on how that's going to be based. So for now, we're just letting you know that a payment just recently went out within the last 2 weeks. And if you haven't received it yet, you should very soon. Next. And you should know for 2022, LFP and ELAP signups are approved for Sonoma and Marin counties. Both counties have been determined D3, which means that opens up the full benefit for LFP of 5 months worth of feed. And for ELAP, it opens up the water hauling portion of that program and the feed transportation costs. And additionally, we will also be reimbursing for any transportation costs you incur for taking livestock to other pastures and that are not normally done. So if it's a normal act for you, then if it's anything up and over that. Next. So 2022 livestock feed program will be processed the same as we did for 2021. It provides payment to eligible livestock owners and contract growers who have covered livestock and who are also producers of grazed forage crop acreage, native and improved pasture land with permanent vegetative cover that have suffered a loss of grazed forage due to a qualifying drought during the normal grazing period for the county, which, like I said, has already been determined. So we know we're having the program. And I believe that the software just opened up this week. And the drought severity had to be at least a D2. Once it hits a D3, that's an automatic 5-month feed payment for LFP, and we've already qualified for Sonoma and Marin. So applications will be processed. You must file an application by January 30th of next year. So we have the rest of the year to take these applications. You must be a commercial livestock operation, and you must meet the average adjusted gross income, and it cannot exceed $900,000. And the max payment for this program is $125,000. Okay, for 2022, emergency assistance for livestock, honeybees, and farm-raised fish, otherwise known as ELAP. This will again include water hauling costs and transportation costs for additional feed brought in for livestock. Now, it will also include costs associated with hauling livestock to other feed sources. This includes places with D2 or D3 drought intensity or greater. For 2021, since there's a new component to this ELAP, there are retroactive payments for 2021. So if you incurred costs for hauling livestock to other feed sources in 2021, you may sign up for the additional coverage by June 30th, 2022 for your 2021 payment, because this is the addition to this application. So they're going to let you go back and pick that up if you had those costs incurred. Next. And Jillian will cover this part.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So we're still on ELAP. So with ELAP, it does cover water hauling and feed transportation. So for feed transportation specifically, to be eligible for feed transporting under ELAP, we look at the additional mileage that is incurred from your normal mileage, years past to what is in your current year. So it cannot exceed 1,000 miles. The livestock feed has to be transported to livestock that are normally would have been on eligible grazing land where your operation is located and where the eligible loss condition, so in this case, where the drought is taking place. And then the additional cost for transporting the livestock feed must be due to an eligible drought, and that will have to have occurred during the normal grazing period. Next, please. So for water transportation, we are looking at water that had to be transported to eligible livestock that are on eligible non-irrigated grazing land. Any additional costs of transporting the water to any area of the county that you're located in is determined by the U.S. Drought Monitor. So in this case, we are in the D3, so the extreme drought. And then for the water, it has to be transported to eligible grazing lands that normally do not require for additional water to be transported to. And then you also, you have up to 150 days from the beginning date of the disaster. So for hauling water, so that's when the D3 drought level was determined for your eligible county. Next slide, please. Thanks, back to you, Lisa.
Can you hear me? Yeah, so there might be other programs that may be eligible later on in the year. And just to go over the emergency conservation program, I think the last time we had that one eligible was probably in 2014. So it's been a while since we've had it. But it basically provides water conservation and enhancement measures to permit grazing of range, pasture, and forage by livestock. Supply emergency water for existing irrigation systems serving orchards and vineyards. Provide emergency water for confined livestock operations. Some of the components are storage facilities such as tanks and troughs, springs or seeps, wells, only where there is no other source of emergency water for less expense. This particular program cost shares, so the producer will have to put out at least 50% to 25% of the cost to install these components. The tough thing about this is that you can't start the project until the application is approved. So that means we have to wait for approval from the national office before any work can start. And usually in past droughts, people had to get started right away. So those people that started usually didn't qualify. And the reason is that the component for emergency conservation program now requires an environmental review. And the review is pretty extensive, especially when it involves ground disturbance. You know, if we're putting in a well, it's got to be in an area that has been previously disturbed. Otherwise, we usually can't get around, you know, the environmental restrictions. So that's something we've gotten training on in the last couple of years, and that's why we can't approve anything prior to the environmental review being done. And usually that requires NRCS technical assistance because we're not qualified to make those determinations. We can make some, you know, on the website, but once we run into a certain condition, we have to get, you know, expert advice. We usually do make a field visit just to determine what kind of needs there is and take pictures. And the other thing about this program is that there is a payment limitation of $500,000 per person. Next slide. The next program we're going to talk about is the Emergency Forest Restoration Program. We did have a drought sign up completed. I'm sorry, it wasn't a drought, that's a misprint. That was due to fire. And it provides payments to eligible owners of non-industrial private forest land in order to carry out emergency measures to restore land damaged by a natural disaster, and it must have existing tree cover or had tree cover immediately before the natural disaster occurred and is suitable for growing trees. Practices include debris removal, site prep, planting materials, and labor to replant forest stands. Restoration forest land roads, fire lanes, fuel breaks, or erosion control structures. Fencing is included, tree shelters and tree tubes to protect trees from wildlife damage, wildlife enhancement to provide cover openings and wildlife habitat. Again, this is a cost share program up to 75% depending on the practice that you need. And again, you cannot start the project until the application is approved and an environmental review is completed. We do make a field visit, but usually we have to have technical assistance from either the RCDs or NRCS. I think this year it will be the RCDs. And there is also another payment limitation of $500,000 per person. So if this comes up as far as drought and you know, producers feel like there's enough of a loss, the county committee can request the program for the county. Hasn't been done yet, though. Okay, the next program that we're going to talk about is the Tree Assistance Program. And this program is for replanting or rehabilitating vines, trees, or bushes destroyed or damaged by drought. Drought is one of the weather-related conditions that can be, that you can apply for assistance. This is not on a county basis. This would be on an individual basis, and there's also other approved diseases that are included for vines. So we've actually been having a lot of participation in the Tree Assistance Program for vines. It is for losses in excess of normal mortality of 18%. So the first 18% will not get you a payment. Anything up and over 18% will be cost shareable. There is a cost share program for the rate per vine or tree. There is a dollar amount for land prep by the acre. And the deadline to sign up is within 90 days of the event or when loss becomes apparent. So same thing, can't start the project until the application is approved. This program is also subject to environmental review, and that's required prior to practice start. A field visit is required by a loss adjuster, which is a third party. And you also have to meet the average adjusted gross income that cannot exceed $900,000. Next. Yeah, and the last program that we have is the low interest loans. They're available in disaster declared counties and contiguous counties. There's various loan options, programs available. There must at least be a 30% loss, must be unable to obtain commercial loans, and the deadline to sign up is within 8 months of the disaster. and you can apply at your local FSA office. We do have a loan officer that works out of Ukiah, but she will make a trip down to Petaluma if anyone wants to meet with her or you know, discuss loan here in Petaluma. We usually make room for her to do that. So that's it. And Julian?
Sorry, I was muted. Didn't mean
Pick
to
up
do that.
yeah.
Okay, so the next thing is establishing farm records with the Farm Service Agency. And the biggest question is, how do I start? Completing eligibility paperwork is time consuming, but it's also the most important part of any FSA sign up. Next. So if you get started early and you know which programs you want to apply for and you have a good understanding of knowing how to prepare for those signups, it's going to be smooth sailing for you in the end. The information that you're going to need to establish farm records with the Farm Service Agency, you will need to provide a parcel number, aka the APN number, in which for the physical county that your property is located in. You will need a proof of ownership, which would include a grant deed or your most recent tax bill, which would come from the assessor's office. If your property is leased, we will still need a proof of ownership and a copy of your lease. And then if you are able to provide a current ranch map, that will be helpful. So once you get your farm and tract established with the Farm Service Agency, now what? You are now ready to file an FSA 578, which is your acreage report. So in the acreage report, it covers crop specifics. So it's gonna list the crops that you grow, the year that those crops were planted, how many acres of crops were planted, the variety, and then if you have vineyards, you could provide the spacing for the vines, etc. And then location is, it should be very similar to any crops that you may have insured. And if you don't have crop insurance, we may go out and measure your crop. So for ELAP and LFP specifically, the eligibility forms that you will need to submit if you are a new producer and you have never applied with our FSA programs before, you will need to provide Form CCC 901, which is going to cover your member information, CCC 902, which is your farm operating plan, and that we have forms for whether you are deciding to apply as an entity or an individual. We have the highly erodible land and wetlands form, so it's 801026. The 802047 covers your applicant and member information. You also have to have your CCC 941 adjusted gross income certification, and then we also will need your direct deposit information, or SF 3881. So for a farm operating plan for an entity, so that would be CCC 902E, it's going to collect information about the entity that's going to be receiving those benefits directly. It also will collect information about the type of operation that you are. It's going to also cover information about the members of, hold on one second. Oh, there we go. Of the members. So it's going to cover their social security numbers, the share of the entity, and who has signature authority. And it's also going to look at if a member is a part of a revocable or irrevocable trust, and depending on the trust, an additional tax ID number may be needed. The support documentation for Form 902E. So if the applicant is an entity, such as a general partnership, joint venture, corporation, limited partnership, limited liability company, revocable, excuse me, living trust, irrevocable trust, estate, or other, you will need to provide support documentation such as partnership agreements, written agreements, corporation agreements, trust documents, etc. Any type of documentation is required to be able to apply. And then irrevocable trust documents, they are required to verify any signing authority of the trustees. The highly erodible land / wetlands AD 1026, that one, you just go submit that and you should be good. Yeah, Lisa could probably give more information on that one.
Most producers are probably familiar with the highly erodible land and wetland certification. They were established back in 1985, and basically it's a form to determine if you're breaking out permanent pasture and you're putting it into an annual crop. The government just wants to make sure that you have a conservation plan and that you're not causing excess erodibility or, affecting a wetland that might have an endangered species. So anytime that kind of change is happening to a permanent crop, a highly erodible land certification needs to be addressed. Usually when a producer picks up new land that they haven't operated before, we go ahead and take a new highly erodible land AD 1026 form so that we can cover the new land that they are in control of, and just to make sure that they're going to be eligible for benefits. So it's basically just a referral to NRCS to get a conservation plan. And as far as I know, most of the conservation plans are pretty farmer friendly and just need to be documented. Next. HEL or wetlands encourages farmers to use conservation practices on highly erodible land, refusing farm bill benefits to those who do not use conservation practices appropriate to the land. And it discourages persons from converting wetlands to utilize for agricultural purposes, those who are ineligible for commodity program payments and other USDA programs.
Okay, so Form AD 2047, this form covers customer information specifically, and it also helps us accurately identify any USDA customers who are participating in our programs. This will include any contact information such as phone numbers and emails. If a participant is deciding to participate in our programs as an entity, we have to have this Form AD 2047 collected for every single member of that entity, whether it be the general partnership, corporation, LLC. We have to have that document submitted to be able to load that entity into our system and have you guys all be ready to go when the program opens up, excuse me. Next. The direct deposit, so Form SF 3881, this will allow us to have USDA directly deposit any reimbursement that you may receive based on any program that you participate in. So it's just going to ask for your institution, banking number, account number, any information that would be important for creating that direct deposit. And that is also important to have when building your profile. Checks are not available to send out unless they just choose to go for that option. Typically, we just send out a letter saying this is your payment and it should be coming into your bank account in the next 5 to 7 days. Next.
So how can I make the process go fast and smooth? Just letting you know that due to the complex nature of processing entities of any kind, the office policy is to collect all the paperwork before any processing begins. We suggest collecting all the paperwork before sending anything into the office by snail mail or UPS or dropping it off in our office. We do that because once we have all the paperwork, we can spend time being efficient and processing it all at once so that it's ready to go and begin the application process. Random submissions of forms in the piecemeal fashion is rarely managed efficiently. We have 6 people here in the office now, so there's 6 different directions that your paperwork can go. Remember, packages with a summary of the forms that you submit that are typed and clearly written get processed very quickly. Signatures should be typed or printed name of the signer for each form. So what I mean by that is that if your signature is unreadable, please type it or print it below the signature, because if I don't know your signature, we're not going to know who that belongs to. And it just becomes really difficult to match up everybody's paperwork. And if it comes in piecemeal, the chances that everything gets collected all at once, and if it goes to 5 different people, it makes it really hard to be efficient with that paperwork. Next. So with the experience that we've had since, I think 2014, we've been processing disaster programs. Once all the paperwork is submitted, a program technician will review the file and determine if it can be loaded into the system and processed. If paperwork cannot be loaded because of missing information, the technician will send the contact a list of missing items and why it cannot be processed via email, and wait for the additional information to come in to review again. So if you get a notification that you're missing information, your paperwork is not being processed until that paperwork comes in. There's no sense in processing it if we can't take it from step 1 to 30, and we have to stop at 10 and wait for additional information. It's not practical with all the paperwork that we're processing. Once all the information is in, the file will be processed and a letter will be mailed letting the prospective applicant know that the eligibility process has been completed and is eligible for a payment. And then we can start loading in the information on the application, which in reality is probably the easiest part of the whole sign-up. It's processing the background and support documentation that takes a while. Next. So for the LFP and the ELAP for 2022, which is what we're going to get started on here in a few weeks, prior to your appointment, the office will email you a letter with the information needed to complete the application. So basically, we're going to go off of the list for 2021, and we already know if you participated in 2021, and we're going to assume that you are probably going to want to apply for 2022. So we're going to start with that list. We're going to start with Marin County first, and we're going to go through and train a couple attempts so that we can take signups twice as fast, but we're going to be slow in the first couple weeks as we begin. When you receive your in-person appointment letter, determine if you would prefer to complete the application on your own or need a phone appointment instead. But all the letters are to request or to notify you of your in-person appointment. We feel that this is the most efficient way to process your application. Prior to your appointment, we take a look of all your program participation, not just LFP and ELAP, We look to see if there's any missing information that we need from you. We like to verify if your banking institution has changed, if you have a new member in your entity. We go over all of that information. It just makes sense, you know, instead of taking one program at a time, we like to take a look at your whole, you know, profile of all the programs that you have participated in or are planning to. In addition to mail or drop off, you have the option to email any documentation to our general email. We've provided a general email, fsa.petaluma.ca@usda.gov for processing. And we did this especially because producers are used to working with one person, and you know, I have to let some of these people go on vacation and they have to have days off sometimes. So if we have it all in one email, any one of us can check it every day. And, you know, that just helps the process move along. We are trying to be cross-trained so that most people can do most actions. So I encourage you to use that general email. We'll be checking it. We have people that check it daily. And I think it will serve you well if you take the time to return it to that email. You can still send it to an individual, but include this as a backup. Then that way, if that person is not here, someone else can take over and get it.
So like Lisa said, the email below, the fsa.petaluma.ca@usda.gov, is a really good resource to use when sending in your documents. Like she also said, you can also reach out to any of us individually, but this general email is a good resource for any producer to use if they have any questions about any documents that they're turning in. And then if you want more information about these programs, you are more than welcome to visit www.farmers.gov. That gives kind of an overview of all of the programs that the Farm Service Agency offers. And you can also check USDA.gov. It gives an overview of all of the agencies that fall under the USDA umbrella. And so that will give you probably even more in-depth information on what programs are out for each different agency, and just to give you kind of a better idea of how our agency works and kind of what to expect when applying for programs. Next.
Okay, thank you. That's all for our presentation. I do have a list of questions that I just received. I can ask those questions and then give you my answer. If I don't have the answer right now, we'll get that answer out to you. And I think Carrie will help send that out for us. So the first question I have is, how do I sign up for LFP 2022? What do I need to do on my end? So, well, first of all, you need to ask yourself if you participated in 2021 LFP. If you did, you don't have to do anything. We're going to contact you and give you an appointment and notify you of what you need and the appointment day and time. And we encourage you to keep that appointment. If you can't make it, you can always reschedule. Or if you would like to, you know, have forms sent and fill it out on your own, you're welcome to do that. But we are making the time to make in-person appointments now that we have opened up the office. We're taking all our precautions. If, you know, we have masks and things to make you comfortable. If you would rather, you know, be safe and have a telephone appointment, we can do that. Through the last 2 years, we got very used to doing our appointments on the phone. So we can definitely do that. If you can work through email, it actually works quite well. I guess for that person, if you participated for 2021, you don't have to do anything. If you have not, please give us a call, give us your contact information, and we'll have a conversation with you and find out what you need to have done. And then we can collect the information from there, and we'll schedule an in-person appointment as well. The next question is it better to wait till later in the year to apply for LFP to have all feed numbers, or can applications be updated? That's a tricky question. I would say that if you think you're going to have changes, if you think you're going to have cattle numbers change, it might be better to wait. If you're going to sell some, we do take into account, any mitigated livestock and, your current livestock numbers. What did we take on the livestock? Okay, so the livestock numbers that we're interested in having is 60 days prior to the beginning of the drought designation, which is October 1st, 2021. So if you go back 60 days prior to that, those are the livestock numbers that we're interested in. Let's see, or can apps be updated? Yeah, you can update your applications, but we'll have to take into account what whether you owe us money or we owe you money. It can be done, but we'd like to deal with the application one time if possible. But I understand if it's not possible, we can update it as long as it's before the deadline. Let's see, can ECP be combined with EQIP? We cannot combine the same work. So if EQIP is cost sharing with you on a project that you want to sign up for ECP, the answer is no, we cannot. If it's separate, and it does happen sometimes where EQIP will, provide some part of the work and ECP covers a different part of it. But the thing to keep in mind is that environmental review has to be completed. If you're working with EQIP, chances are NRCS will do the environmental review, which is probably better. So if you do apply for ECP and it's not the same project that you're getting cost shared in EQIP, we can take a look at that and see if we can fund it. But you do have to wait until it's approved on our end, whether EQIP is approved or not. It says, I can tell now how much forage loss I have and will have. Can I apply now for loss on all the pasture that has not grown in 2022? Yes, the county has been determined for LFP and for ELAP. Yes, you can apply now. If you applied in 2021, I ask that you wait for us to set your appointment up because depending on the complexity of your farm, we will probably do those first to implement our training for our new trainees. And then as they get a little more experience, then we'll deal with the ones that are a little more complex. So if you feel like it's a very small acreage and you have all your leases up to date, yeah, you can apply as soon as we can take care of it in depth. Was there any more questions, Carrie? That's all I had.
Yeah, there's a few that have just come in, Lisa. And I just want to let you know, like
Okay.
Guido did not apply for the LFP last year, but he definitely wants to apply for it this year. So he's going to follow up with you via email.
Yes.
And then there was someone that asked about signing up for LFP. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to read the question.
I know. I can't find it.
Okay, I'm going to follow up actually with that on a personal level. I'm going to follow up with that one directly.
All right.
If they don't remember if they signed up in 2021, is there an easy way to find out, or do they need to start applying again? I'm assuming it's for the LFP.
If they've already applied for 2021,
They don't know if they
Yeah.
did apply. They're not sure.
they just need to call us. We can look it up.
Okay. So I just want to make sure we're all understanding this. The best way to follow up with our local FSA office is either to call or to email the general email. And to set up, they can set up an in-person appointment to figure out where they are with their paperwork and what's needed, and they can collect all that paperwork from you directly at the office.
Yes.
Okay, because all those documents, that's a lot. It's a little
It is.
overwhelming.
It's kind of why we start with the people that have signed up for 2021, because we know most of that paperwork is already completed. The only thing that we need to consider is any new leases or any ground that was not added in for 2021. So we're trying to take the easiest ones first so that we can start getting through our 300 plus applicants that applied last year. So not only for training purposes, but it's kind of the most efficient way to get the process done. And then we have more time with producers that are new, still collecting leases. A lot of times leases are still being written right now. So until you have those leases in hand, you're really not ready to sign up, because I can't sign you up and pay you on something that isn't supported. I don't have the authority to do that. So I would suggest making sure all your leases are in place for 2022. Make sure that all the land that you have in control for 2022 is on our records. When you come in for an in-person appointment, we're going to pull up everything that's under your name already. If the acreage doesn't match up to what you have, then we need to look for that and see what's missing. We also, need to make sure that any owned land is the same name that's on a lease. So, if I get the owned land that's owned by a trust, and then on the lease it's Joe Farmer, that's not going to work. We need to make that paper connection so that it's audit proof. We don't want to have to issue out a check and then ask for the money back because we don't have that support documentation. These files do get reviewed every year, and I'm proud to say we haven't had to collect any money back. And that's why we scrutinize that stuff very carefully, so that once you get that money, you don't have to worry that it's going to have to be paid back.
Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Sorry, nobody has video on, so I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So if what's come up a couple times is that you might have submitted to FSA an annual lease, so a 1-year lease last year, which means you're going to need to redo it again this year. There are, if anybody's interested, there's some just like super easy templates, like 1-pagers that just make it clear, who owns the land, who's getting leased to, if it's in your farm business name, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention is, years ago, we were able to take canceled checks in lieu of a lease. We no longer can do that. So I have to have a written document, or, if you have a formal lease, that's the best. If it's for more than 1 year and you know it's going to be for more than 1 year, I would suggest that you try to get it for however many years you're going to be in control of it, or you think you are. Because a 1 year lease, if you got one in for 2021 and it expires in 2021, we're going to need a new lease for 2022. So that's really kind of sometimes the hang up is we start looking at those leases and they have to be for the year that we make the payment. And, you know, a 2-3 year expired lease is not going to work.
Okay, so
we
I
can
just
leave that acreage out, but you know, most people want to make sure that they get all the acreage that they operate in, because usually that's what the payment is based off of.
So for Nicole was asking about, they did sign up in 2021, but would like to be considered for the livestock transportation. Nicole, I'm assuming you're talking about the LFP you signed up for in 2021. And then for the livestock transportation, do they need to make an appointment for this?
Yes. If they did sign up for 2021, we will be in contact with them. If, you know, we should be getting to most people, you know, as quickly as possible. If you're still gathering leases, I suggest you wait. If you have everything in hand, give us a call. We'll put you on the list and we'll try to get you in, you know, sooner if we can. But, you know, the goal is to get as many applications processed as fast as possible. And the easiest way for us to do that is to work with what, you know, we already have and you know, bring new people in and squeeze them in. We have days available for, you know, other appointments. And also keep in mind that we have other programs that are probably going to be released during this time that LFP is going on. So it's in our best interest to get these LFP payments paid out and as soon as possible.
Okay, I think I'm still actually a little confused on this. And so but what Vince had kind of alluded to about like, so a lot of ranchers already know how much forage loss they're going to have for 2022 just because of previous records and so forth. I think Guido mentioned that. But I'm still a little confused. Does it make sense for people to wait to apply for the LFP coverage when they have all of the extra numbers for the feed that they brought in at the end of the season? Since I think you said that date was January 2023. Or can they start applying now and then simply update the application?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you have all the paperwork, there's no need to postpone it. You can come in. If you have to update it later, we can update it. But, you know, it's not based on whether they know how much loss they have. For LFP, that payment has already been determined. It's going to be 5 months worth of feed. That's it. That's the maximum that they can receive. And we already know that the drought has been determined to receive the maximum amounts. Same with ELAP. If they're water hauling, it does make sense to wait until they've reached 150 days of water hauling. I guess I could pay on 30 days, but if the maximum amount is 150 days and you know you're still going to haul water, you know, it's just going through that application again. But, you know, if a producer comes in and says, hey, I got 30 days worth of water hauling and I got 30 days worth of transportation costs, and that's all I'm going to do for the year, yeah, call. We'll get you in and get your application processed.
Okay. So Monica, call or email to set up an appointment. And then someone again asked about the lease. So USDA has a 1-page annual lease agreement certification statement, the CCC-855. Lisa, that's available on the Farm Gov site. I can find it and send it out to everybody.
I'm not sure if that is actually available. They can call in and we can send it to them.
Okay.
But I would caution you to use that cautiously because it is only good for 1 year. So if they intend to use that lease for, ongoing, it's not going to work. It's only good for 2022 period. We're going to ask for another one for 2023 if we go into another drought year. So I would recommend that if they can, do up a lease with, if it's for 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is, it would be much better to do that. You don't have to worry about it year to year. But yes, it is available. It's available for 1 year only. You can use that as a template to make a lease and make it for as long as you'd like. And it does need to be signed by the lessor and the lessee.
Okay, so so it's like a Band-Aid, right? We're talking about the annual lease. So it's like FarmLink is a great nonprofit organization that can help you draft a lease if you need, for doing a longer term lease. Obviously lawyers, things like that. Feel free to reach out to me directly. I used to do a lot of that work, so I'm happy to talk through like the important things to include in your lease and all of that if you're looking to do a long-standing lease. And before I close up, I just want to make sure that we've answered all the questions. And if there's any follow-up, please just email me directly. I put my email in the chat. I'm happy to follow up. I'd also really appreciate, I know it's like not the most exciting thing to do, but I'd really appreciate if you could fill out that eval. I'm going to send that to you out again, just so we can get some feedback on ways we can improve these. I would love to be able to do some things in person, but it's not, we're kind of getting into the season of crazy busy. And thank goodness we're getting some rain right now. But I just want to make sure if everybody's good on questions, because I can, just keep this open for a couple more minutes. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for attending. I will send out the recording for everybody. And once again, reach out to me directly with any questions. I'm happy to follow up on your behalf. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.